Hi guys! Today's episode is going to be all about needles, so stay tuned to learn the different needle sizes, finishes, and types, and their best uses. Before we get started, I just wanted to remind you guys, if you have any questions at all, just leave a comment below and we'll get back to you with the answer. So the typical machine embroidery needle is labeled DBXK5, and these needles are actually designed for machine embroidery with an elongated needle eye, which helps the thread pass through the needle without any friction, thus reducing thread breaks. So this is your standard 7511 embroidery needle. Now this is a sharp point, and it's what you're going to be using for most products. So we here at Ricoma use standard chromium plated Grosbecker needles. However, before you get started, I do urge you to ask your manufacturer or distributor which type of needles are compatible with your machine, just to double check. So now I want to talk to you guys about the different needle points and the main differences between the three. So the three needle points are sharp point, ballpoint, and universal. And typically you're going to be using sharp point in most of your embroidery projects. However, you do need to have a variety of points, especially ballpoint, because you're going to need them for stretchy fabrics. So the main difference between the sharp point and the ballpoint needle is that the sharp point needle actually penetrates and pierces through the fabric, so it creates tiny little punctures in the fabric. Meanwhile, the ballpoint needle will actually slip in through the threads, so it won't actually be creating a puncture or a hole in the fabric. You're going to want to use your ballpoint needle when you're working with any type of fabric that has some stretch to it, but you're going to especially need it when you're working with very stretchy fabrics such as 100% polyester material. And now you usually see that in knits or sports gear, anything that has moisture wicking qualities. That's usually 100% polyester material, which means it's very stretchy, so you're going to need that ballpoint to make sure that you're not shredding your fabric or that your thread isn't fraying. And then we have the universal tip, and that sits somewhere between the sharp point and the ballpoint needle in terms of shape. Now, this is universal as its name suggests, so you can use it for most embroidery projects. However, I do not recommend using a universal tip for your water-soluble stabilizer projects. And when I say that, I'm talking about projects like freestanding lace or projects like any type of see-through fabric that you would use water-soluble stabilizer instead of a regular cutaway or tearaway. When you're going to use that, use your sharp point instead. Now I'm going to tell you guys about the different needle sizes and what their best uses are. Needles vary in size anywhere as small as 60 to 110. Now, for machine embroidery, you're most likely going to stick between the 65 and the 90 range. So the smallest needle size you're going to probably use in commercial machine embroidery is your 65-9 needle, but here I actually have one size down, and this is your 68 needle. Now, I'm actually going to take it out so I can show you. So if you see here, I don't even know if you guys can see on camera, but I can even barely see the eye. So this indicates that this is going to be for very, very thin thread and very small and minute details. So you're going to want to use your 65-9 or your 68. Let's say you're doing a very one-off project where you have very intricate details. Try your 68, but usually stick to a 65-9 if you're going for the small lettering and details. So just for fun, I'm going to hold up the 68 needle and the 7511 needle so you can see the physical difference between the two. My hands are shaking a lot, but you could probably see the difference here. This one is a lot finer, and this one is thicker and has a larger eye. Now the next size up after your 68 and your 65-9 needle will be your 70-10 needle, and this one is a little more of a safe zone when it comes to embroidering a bit smaller details and small lettering. And then next we have our size 75-11 needle, which, like I said before, is our standard embroidery needle size. It's what will work for most of your projects, and I had showed you guys before, but this is it again. As you can see, it's not as fine as the smaller needles, but it's not as thick as the ones you're about to see. The next size up is the 80-12 needle, and this is also a very common needle in machine embroidery. A lot of machine embroiderers use these needles for tougher fabrics such as caps, such as canvas. Anything that's a little bit thicker than your normal embroidered project, you're probably going to want to use a 80-12 needle instead. And this will also help if you're embroidering a very dense design and are having issues with it, because the thread will be able to pass through a little bit easier because it has a larger eye. The next size up is a 9014, and that will probably be the largest size needle that you'll use in your standard machine embroidery projects. And that also is used for tougher fabrics. And also, if you're embroidering with a very thick, heavy threads or thick metallic threads, then you're gonna wanna use your 9014 needle because it has a larger needle eye. Anything higher than 9014 will be a specialty needle that you're gonna wanna use for very thick garments or very heavy threads, and that will be your 116 and your 110/18. So now that we went through all the needle sizes, I want to remind you guys that if you are going to change your needle size, to also consider the size of the thread. So the main idea is to make sure that the thread is passing through the eye of the needle smoothly and without any friction, because that is what's going to help reduce thread breaks. So typically what you want to do is that when the larger the thread you're using, the larger the needle's eye should be. However, you also need to keep in mind the fabric that you're embroidering on, because you don't want to puncture too heavy of a hole in a lightweight fabric. For those of you who don't know, the standard embroidery weight thread is a 40 weight thread. Anything higher than 40, 50, 60, 70, that is actually a lighter thread, okay? And anything lower than 40 is actually a heavier thread. So if you go lower than 40 and you're having issues, let's say you're using a 30 weight thread and you're having issues with your 7511, then try an 8012 needle and see if that works. Something else I want you guys to keep in mind is that when you are changing your thread size, you also are changing your tension. So you might need to make a few tension adjustments to make sure that the thread on that needle is going through smoothly and not causing any friction. So let's say you went up a thread size and you're still using your standard 7511 needle because you don't have any other needle, then what you're gonna wanna do is to loosen your thread tension, because of course, since you have a thicker thread passing through a smaller needle, you're gonna have more friction. So to reduce that friction, you loosen the tension on the top tension knob of that same needle that you're working with. Titanium needles, as their name suggests, are more durable. They're actually said to last 3 to 5 times longer depending on what type of fabrics you're embroidering on. And these are really good if you're embroidering large designs, because you're not going to need to stop for any needle breaks. So you're definitely going to want something durable so that you can keep the efficiency going. Also, they're really good for thick materials such as 3D puff embroidery on structured caps or even thick bags. Titanium needles are your go-to. Then we have our Teflon coated needles, which will do you well if you're going to be working with adhesive sprays and adhesive backings. The coating will actually help to protect the needle. There are also a bunch of other specialty needles, such as needles that are designed specifically for leather, specifically for metallic threads, that you can find on basically any embroidery supply store. So there you have it. That is a solid overview on what you need to know about needles. Now, if you have any other questions about needles, make sure to leave them in the comments below. And if you want to see a similar video on thread weights and sizes, then let us know and we'll make one. I want to thank you all for watching. If you like this video, please make sure to hit the thumbs up button below and to subscribe to our channel. I also want to invite you to our Facebook group, Embroidery and Custom Apparel Mastery, where you can join myself and other embroiderers and ask questions and share knowledge. I included the link to the group in the description below. Again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you back here next time. Shoot me down, but I won't fall. I am Teflon. That is hilarious. So that means you will need to make a few tension adjustments. Fine and delicate this needle is. And one of them just dropped on the floor. Yeah, I'm always repeating myself. Get used to it. Over and out. Oh no, my bad nail.